Alright, so I literally had to peel myself away from Fate Samurai Remnant. I've already clocked in 10 hours into the game. If you wanted a simple first impressions, it's a good game. But we still gotta do our, daily FGO video. And we have the Lizard Brigade just kind of hitting the entire NA version. And I did want to do videos covering them. Because while I think the only one that's going to see a lot of use in most boxes is probably going to be the Alter Ego one, as a beginning player, the Caster Liz and the Brave Liz, the Saber one, you can actually get a little bit of value in. And so I wanted to make these videos kind of talking about that and showing that they're not, these crazy god servants or anything, but just having a free NP5 servant can be very good when you're starting out, and they can still perform fairly well. I mean, even Brave Liz over here doesn't have the craziest kit, of all time, but she at least has the makings of a decent enough DPS unit. I don't know if you're going to be using her to take down people like Kiara, but maybe bosses that are a shade weaker than that, you could actually bring her to and maybe get a bit of mileage from, especially some Lancer or Berserker bosses. She could perform decently well. But before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like in the video, you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content. Also, I'm streaming about every Monday, Wednesday, Friday over on the Twitch. I'm kind of getting into like 3 days a week. Still trying to get back into the swing of things after, like 3 weeks basically of not streaming at all. It's a little more exhausting than I remember it being. It takes a little bit of a strain to have to talk for a couple of hours. And so I'm trying to get back used to it, and I know I'm going to be doing the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament on Saturday, so I may not stream today, but usually I'm going to be streaming Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and hopefully I can get to every weekday again, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start diving right into this, starting off with her hits, which aren't the craziest thing. I mean, this isn't a notoriously broken servant, but you can get some decent enough mileage out of these hits. Her star gen is not going to be popping off, but technically, she does have something for that on the third skill. We'll get to that when we get there, that whole smorgasbord of just random stuff she has going on. So don't rely on the quick card to be dropping your stars, although I don't think anybody using Brave Liz is really expecting her to be that insane when it comes to star gen. Her arts cards are surprisingly not that bad. 3 hits a pop, 0.55% NP gain, and a passive 6% arts buff. And she does have an NP gain skill. Granted, it only lasts for 1 turn, but if you do time it correctly, you can actually see some decent NP refund. I would know I had to use Brave Liz a lot when I first started my current FGO account, and sometimes you gotta waste that invincibility to get that NP gain because you really just need to fire your NP. Thankfully, because she is a buster unit, those double buster cards with Koyanskaya, if you happen to have her, will also function as a method of getting your NP back, because Koyanskaya gives you the ability to get NP on your buster card. So she's actually not going to be in that bad of a position, but I gotta bring it back because this is one of the free-to-play servants that people are like, she's trash, she's not good at all, but they gave her the 5-hit extra attack, the composite card that gens stars, NP, and does big boy damage. They gave her the glorious 5 hits. And so, I gotta give her a free point for that alone. But let's start moving into some of her skills. And trust me, this is not going to take very long because these skills are very simple and very straightforward. Starting off with the first skill, I basically already said what this one does when I talked about the arts cards, but you get 1 turn of invincibility and you get 50% NP gain for 1 turn on a 6-turn cooldown. In a vacuum, both of these effects are really strong. The invincibility on a free-to-play single-target servant when you don't have anybody else to use is good. That is some hardline survivability that if you need to tank an enemy NP or you're really low on health, then you just really need to buy that extra last turn so you can win the fight. It's just good for that. I'm glad they at least gave her this as opposed to nothing at all. And the 50% NP gain, as I mentioned just about a minute ago, can be very effective if you want to get a lot of NP refund going with those arts cards, right? It can be very, very strong. The only unfortunate thing, at least when I remember using Brave Liz a lot during like year 2, is that sometimes you're kind of forced into a dilemma of, do I use the invincibility to kind of save myself later, or do I use the NP gain now to get my NP and hope that I can just decimate the opponents? Because granted, a free NP5 servant is going to be able to do some decent damage, and she can do surprisingly a decent bit of damage, but it does kind of give you that dilemma. Almost like, say, the Jack, Jalter, Raikou problem, where they have their damage steroid attached to their survivability, but not to the same extent because it's a bit more tactful, I guess, because you're choosing between NP gain and invincibility. Although, I would say for using double Koyenskaya, just go ahead and use it for survivability because Koyenskaya doesn't give you any survivability anyway. It's just going to help your NP gain out with the raw battery and the buff to your buster cards, allowing them to gen NP. So that's probably how I'd go about using her in the modern day. Her second skill is basically going to be her damage steroid. It gives her a little bit of defense, which I guess can be nice. Maybe you'll live a random hit every now and then with that 20% defense, but I really wouldn't count on it unless you're pairing her with like MASH or something. Maybe you're doing the MASH Bedivere Liz comp or something, trying to give everybody big defense. I don't know if you're down that horrific, but if you are, that is a potential option, right? Pairing all their defenses together to make Liz really tanky. But realistically, you're just going to pop this on your NP turn. Ideally, a turn where you have your double buster cards and your NP, so you can get a really nice buster Brave Chain going and doing just a lot of effective damage. But even when this does fall off, because she does just have a free NP5, and that's going to buff up the damage that her raw NP does, she'll still do good damage, but with the mana burst up, her damage can actually be surprisingly good. So again, if you do have to use her, don't doubt her. She'll put out some good damage for you. It's just, there's not a whole lot here going on. That's kind of all she's able to do. And then, oh boy, here is the third skill. This is the skill of the hour, the one that's going to be getting buffed. Basically, at the cost of 50% of your NP gauge, you're going to get 1 of 5 random effects. Now, they're all pretty good except for one. You can either get a 50% buster buff for 3 turns, which is crazy. You can drop 50 stars, get the entire party 50% attack for 1 turn, which potentially can even make your Koyenskayas that are supporting you even do a little bit of damage, because a 50% attack buff is huge, and she already has a passive 20% NP damage buff. So if you do get that, let those Koyenskayas rip. They might actually be able to do a little bit of damage themselves. She could also potentially protect the entire party with invincibility for 1 turn, but do not use this if you are in desperate need of that invincibility, because again, 1 in 5 chance. And unfortunately, one of those other chances is a 3k heal for the party, which I really wish when they buffed this skill, they just made that 3k HP every turn for 3 turns for the party. That's good. It would maybe offset the fact that you didn't get the 50% buster buff, the 50 stars, which guarantees that everybody crits that turn, the 50% attack buff for the entire party, which again, it can turn your Koyenskayas into like pseudo DPSs for that turn. Or even the party-wide invincibility. Even though you're not getting any damage, you do functionally get a free turn. But unfortunately, this is kind of like the L to get when you pop this skill. It is very, very fun to use because of the little bit of the randomness there. Now, obviously, it would have been a lot better that when they buffed this, you could have picked whatever you gotten. I think people would respect this unit a lot more, because if you really wanted a lot of damage, you would always just pick the attack buff, pop her second skill, have those multiply into each other, free NP5 with a 50% attack buff, 40% mana burst. You would be cooking. You'd be doing a lot of damage, especially because I guess we'll just rip this band-aid off here. They actually do also buff her NP, which I think is funny. It goes from rank B to V because, it's a Liz servant, so the lore's got to be completely all messed up and everything. And all things considered, not a bad NP. I mean, it could definitely be a lot worse. It at least has the pierce defense on it, which is kind of like the worst form of piercing that you could have. Like, pierce invincibility, I would say, is the best. Then sure hit is also nice because a lot of units still have dodge. Pierce defense is really specific because not a lot of bosses use that defense, but it is nice when they do use it, right? I feel like it's the one you really run into the least. But for some reason, whenever it does pop up, it's always the most annoying one because it just completely shuts down your units, or you just do like negative damage. She also has this whole like spread of fire, inflict burn for 5 turns thing going on in her overcharge, but you're really not going to care about that very much. I guess if your box is a little bit more limited and you have some weird fight where the enemy has like 99% special resistance and they only got like 50k HP, and you really just need somebody that can do damage over time with burn, kind of like, think of the Hermit Crab challenge quest that we had, and Waver was really good for that because it just was unkillable unless you use damage over time, basically. It can be kind of nice for that if you don't have anybody else as a new player, but again, we don't run into those very frequently. She'll kind of fill in those niches. that you probably will never need as a free-to-play, or by the time you do need those niches, you will probably have pulled a better 4 or 5-star unit from the gacha, potentially even like a 3-star unit that could probably do the job a little bit better, but it's nice that she at least does them. Most important thing is that they buffed her NP, because at least now, as a free-to-play player, if you're just starting the game, they at least gave you a free NP5 single target unit that can do some decent damage and at least has survivability. Now, I wish they would have just tacked like a battery on one of the skills or something along those lines, but that kind of goes against the whole gimmick of the third skill. You know, depleting 50% battery to then give you a random effect, but maybe in the future they'll buff some of her other skills, right? Like, I could definitely see them even giving her a 50% battery to kind of counter that third skill demerit and make it less of a demerit, right? Let's say they go up to the second skill, they make that buster buff 3 turns, the defense 3 turns, slap on a 50% battery, or if they really want to be hilarious and just capitalize on the meme value of this servant, give her a 100% battery to maybe incentivize people to use that third skill. Now, one of the nice things about the third skill that I don't see a lot of people talk about when they talk about and evaluate this unit, which, to be fair, not a lot of people are talking about this unit, so it's my job to come in here and give my 2 cents. But because she is a free NP5 unit, you can get over 100% of your NP. So say you get to at least 150%, you can still fire that third skill and then fire her NP, right, to potentially see if maybe you'll get a little bit of extra damage. Maybe you'll turn that turn into a crit turn, right? So you can follow up that NP with some decent crit damage, right? Because even Merlin, if you're using him over Koya and Skya, does give you a lot of crit damage on hero creation. Or you could even gas up your NP a lot by getting really good damage. I mean, it is a 2 in 5 chance to either get the buster or the attack buff, so that is kind of nice, but you are ultimately still playing the lotto. I don't think this unit is beyond saving, and again, for new players, for new free-to-play guys that just need someone who can do decent enough damage, I speak from experience, she is usable enough that she can kind of carry you until you can find a better single target to use, or if you just need someone to take out Lanterns for you, she'll probably be able to get the job done. I know I was able to get it done, it was a little rough sometimes, but have a little patience and she'll get you across the finish line. I'm not saying she's exceptionally, like, crazy or anything. In fact, I'm starting to do letter gradings for these servants at the end of these videos, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In the grand scheme of like every servant in the game, she's going to be getting a D. I don't think she's an F. She's not failing. There are the workings of a good servant here. The NP buff allows her to do good damage. She at least has a damage steroid. She has survivability. She can help her own NP problems with her own massive NP gain ability, and then it's just the third skill's randomness that is a little hurtful. But if you want to be offensive, technically 3 in 5 chance to get 50 stars to guarantee everybody's critting, get the buster buff or get the attack buff, that's not bad, but it really will sting whenever you get the HP or the invincibility, especially when you don't need it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think a D is a fine letter grading for her. Maybe if you want to be a little bit more harsh, you could say she gets a D-. We're not doing E's around here. Look, when I went to school, we went F, D, C, B, A, all right? Those are the rankings. That's just how it's going to be. Maybe if a servant is really broken, we'll give him the EX letter grading because, you know, EX double phantasms. I don't know. Maybe it fits with the Fate lore or something, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I think a D is fine as a letter grading for her. Maybe a D- if you want to be mean. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Caster Liz, and I am working on my Samurai Remnant review. So far, I am absolutely loving the game. Let's just hope that nothing bad happens going on to Chapter 3 and onwards, which is about where I'm at 10 hours of gameplay. I'm trying to 100% the game as best as I can, but I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late, guys.